This is the summary of Lesson 4, Making the Moves. And this lesson is about transformations, or the movement of a figure in a coordinate plane or in a grid. And the first one is a translation. So if you take a polygon, in this case this is a trapezoid, and if you move it in the grid, if you translate it to another place, that is called a translation. If you actually connect the two copies, these line segments here connect the corresponding sides of the two copies, then you get a prism. So a prism is taking one base and translating the copy of that base to another place, and then connecting the two figures, and you get a prism. So if you add some color, it's kind of a nice way to look at that. So a translation. The second is a rotation. So if you take the blue figure and rotate it, in this case I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise to the green figure, and I'm going to rotate it around this point right here, or I can rotate it the opposite way. So rotate the green figure to the blue figure around that same point. And we haven't really talked much, or the authors anyway haven't talked much about finding the center of rotation. This looks like a mess. I'm going to go through this one at a time in a moment. Well, what I'm doing is connecting the corresponding points of the figures. I'm finding the perpendicular line from the midpoint. I'm drawing that line, and they all intersect at the center of rotation. So let's look at one at a time. So if I connect these two corresponding points, these are the corresponding points of these two figures, the blue figure and the green figure. And if I draw a perpendicular line from the midpoint, so I'm going to find the midpoint. I'm going to use docere actually to locate the midpoint. Remember, another line segment drawn to this line will snap, will stick at the midpoint. So you know where that is. Then you draw a perpendicular line at 90 degrees, and they will all intersect at the center of rotation. So that's that one. The next one, connect these two corresponding points, find the midpoint, draw the perpendicular line, and they will intersect. The next one, connect the two corresponding points, find the midpoint, which actually is right here, draw a perpendicular, no, it's not right here, it's right here actually. Draw a perpendicular line, and it will intersect at the center of rotation. The next one, down here, actually the midpoint is this axis. Draw a line that's perpendicular, it intersects at the point, the center of rotation. The next one, connect the corresponding points, find the midpoint. In this case, I anyway had to use docere to find that midpoint. Draw the perpendicular line, and they will intersect at the center of rotation. And the last one, same thing. So they all intersect here. Now to check that, you can count from this center of rotation to each corresponding point. So I'm going to count along this axis 1 unit. And if I'm rotating from the green to the blue in this case, I'm going to count in the direction of rotation 2 units. So along the axis 1 unit, in the direction of rotation 2 units. I'm actually going to rotate this way because I know I have to get to this figure. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees this way, and then count again. 1 unit, 2 units in the direction of the rotation. It gets me to the corresponding point. So that's correct. If I do that again and check it with each of the other points, I'm going to find the same thing. Count 2 units, and then 3 units in the direction of the rotation. Count 2 units along the axis, 3 units in the direction of rotation. Get to the corresponding point. For B, count 1 unit along the axis, rotate 90 degrees, count 1 unit along the axis. C, count 2 units along the axis, 1 unit in the direction of rotation, 2 units along the axis, 1 unit in the direction of rotation. It gets you to C prime. So those are all checking or ensuring that you've done the rotation correctly. D, 3 units along the axis, 3 units along the axis after rotating 90 degrees. E, same thing, 3 units, and then 3 units in the direction of rotation. Rotate 90 degrees, 3 units in the direction of rotation. Now, if I want to, I did that a little bit differently than I should have. If I'm rotating from A prime to A, I'm going to use this axis. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to use this axis because this is the first one in this case. I count along the axis and 2 units in the direction of rotation. And I'm going to rotate that axis 90 degrees, count 1 unit, 2 units in the direction of rotation. But now if I want to talk about rotating A counterclockwise, going the opposite direction, I'm going to switch these axes. So I'm going to have the axes go this way. So now I'm going to count 2 units along the axis and 1 unit in the direction of rotation. This is subtle. Sometimes you'll think of it this way, other times you're not. As long as you count and you get to the same spot, it doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as every point matches its spot after counting. So 2 units along the axis, 1 unit in the direction of rotation. And finally, a reflection. This is the line of reflection. Also, think of it as a mirror that you're looking into. So this figure is going to reflect back at you if it was a mirror. So you connect the corresponding points. If you don't know where this reflection is, then you have to draw perpendicular lines from each point. So a perpendicular line means it forms a right angle with the line of reflection. And then you have to draw on the other side the same distance. So this is half the diagonal. I would have to draw half the diagonal on this side. This is 1 diagonal plus a half of a diagonal. So I'd have to draw a half and 1 diagonal on the other side. But it's a line that's perpendicular to the line of reflection. That means it forms a right angle. So these are all 90-degree angles here. So draw the line that's perpendicular and go 1 diagonal on the other side. That gets you to the corresponding point. There are 2 points on the same line. This one is a half of a diagonal. Half of a diagonal on the other side gets you to the corresponding point. This one is 1.5 diagonals. So a half plus 1 gets you to the corresponding point on the other side. So that is a reflection. So you have translations, you have rotations, and you have reflections.